So I started this morning by expressing my gratitude that we got to gather to practice sanity together, by which I mean it is very easy to be distracted by shiny objects, like a crow. We saw a beautiful, really big crow or raven as we were driving in, and you know they're famous for, those corvid birds are famous for collecting shiny objects, and it's a beautiful analogy, a little too close to home, for our own lives, that we run around gathering shiny objects, comforts, creature comforts for the body, for the home, for the automobile. I'm not saying that's bad, but it becomes problematic when we believe the shiny objects will make us happy forever. This is a theme you hear over and over and over again in the teachings of the Dharma, because it's drawn from the Buddha's Four Noble Truths, that it is clinging to things that we believe will make us feel better that is the root, ultimately, of our suffering. The teaching does not say to have a lovely bell that a friend gifted to me is a bad thing. But if I lost the bell, or one of you stole the bell because you're a crow and it's a lovely shiny object, and I am upset, angry, distressed, I have suffering in the body and mind, then I am missing the point, which is that objects come and go. And that's okay. In fact, it's the nature of reality. That's one of the reasons you were focusing on your breath, because guess what? How long does one breath last? One breath ceases to exist forever. It's the ultimate arising and passing away. Meditation is breath. Every few seconds, there's something that comes into being and ceases to be. Comes into being and ceases to be. You're practicing impermanence. You're practicing letting go. You're practicing enjoying the breath, the object, the love affair, the health, the human body while it's here, and ideally getting to where we let it go with ease, without clinging and without suffering. So I'm going to talk today on a few themes that I spoke about in a Dharma talk on the 10-day retreat several of you were at in August, and I've been asked, sort of like a greatest hits record really, to talk about those themes again. And I'm more than happy to do so for those of you that haven't perhaps heard them. And I want to, like all ethical academics, cite my sources and not plagiarize. A lot of what I'm going to offer today is drawn from a series of talks by a teacher called Ajahn Brahm. Beautiful teacher. He's, I believe, I don't know his history terribly well. I've not met him in person, but he's a British fellow by origin. He was a public school teacher, I believe, in England, and in his adult life entered the robes and took on the robes of the Theravadan lineage and became a monk. I think he was in his 30s or maybe 40s, and he's been a monk ever since. He's the abbot or head of a monastery in Australia. I think in Perth. I'm not entirely sure. You can quickly Google that if you wish. But Ajahn Brahm has given a series of talks on the various idea of being prisoners in our own minds. So I'm drawing some of these stories from his work and his talks and sharing them with you today, and then adding some viewpoints perhaps from my own teaching and lineage. So he tells the story of when he was first a monk, a fairly newly ordained monk, and a very, very poor monastery. Monasteries survive on donations, the way Dharma teachers try to, and often there's not a lot of funds. So he said the monks worked tirelessly, and they enjoyed that. They meditated, they practiced, and they did a lot of manual labor, repairing the monastery, building things, digging, gardening, all the things one would do to keep a center going. And he was tasked with building a brick wall along one side of the perimeter, I guess, of the property. And he took this very seriously as he tells the story. He really, really enjoyed the work. He said, I was a teacher. I had no skills at, laying bricks and mortar, but I took it on as a meditation study. And he said he really enjoyed the practice of making the mortar and laying the bricks and, squaring them off. And he took it as a mindfulness practice and perhaps with a little bit of pride. And he finished the wall, and he was very pleased with his work, and he stepped back and was looking at the whole wall, and he noticed that there were 2 bricks that were off kilter. that were, he said they were sort of diagonal and sticking out. That, he'd done a poor job. And as he tells it, his mind got very obsessed with these 2 bad bricks and very distressed by the 2 bad bricks. And it focused the mind. I'm sure this doesn't ring true for any of us. It focused on the 2 bad bricks and not on the marvelous wall. And it distressed him to the extent, as he tells it, that he went to his abbot and he said, please let me tear the wall down. I want to fix it. I want to do it right. And the abbot said, no, it's great the way it is, and it's part of your training to learn to be with the 2 bad bricks. So Ajahn Brahm was not very happy with that, I don't think. And off he went on his merry way. I mean, he talks about a little later on in his time, in those early days, a somewhat illustrious visitor came to the monastery. I forget who or why. And Ajahn Brahm was asked to show them around. And as he tells it, he tried to sort of scuttle away from the wall so they wouldn't notice the wall. And as is the nature of things, the person stopped and took a really good look at that wall. And Ajahn Brahm said, I built the wall and there's 2 bad bricks. And the person said, it's a lovely wall. What a great wall. You know what I see? I see 998 fantastic bricks. And Ajahn Brahm didn't really take it in. Kind of went, and went on. But this stuck with him. It stuck with him. And he started to, kind of contemplate it and think about it and look at the mind. And the mind's tendency, as is in psychology, it's the negativity bias, is the term it's given, of the human mind to seek out what's missing, to seek out what's wrong, to seek out what's not working. Anybody ever find your mind does this? Only my hand up. Well, I'm going to go because clearly you're all enlightened. So let's try that again. Does anyone else ever notice their mind sometimes looks only at what's not working? Thank you. I appreciate your honesty. And so he goes on, and he teaches many other things. And then there's another part of what he shares that I just am delighted to share, and some of you have heard before. Where the monastery that Ajahn Brahm is now the abbot of is in Australia, it's right next door to a men's prison, a maximum security prison, so fairly long sentences, usually based on fairly difficult, challenging behaviors and crimes that these persons have been committed of. And he says it's quite funny because often people come to the monastery because it's kind of also has walls around it and looks rather austere and, formal. People come in and, is this the prison? Like, no, this is the monastery. Okay. And they go over to the prison and vice versa. People, of course, drive into the prison. Is this the monastery? No, it's the prison. And they go next door. So he tells the story about how he used to teach mindfulness and Dharma at this prison. And then as he's written many books, he's a beautifully loved teacher, and he travels more and more commitments as tend to happen. And he started getting his senior monks to lead the classes at the prison next door. And then I think it sort of faded away for a while. And he talks about getting a call from the, what do you call them? They're not the abbots of the prison, the boss of the prison, they have a name. The warden, thank you. The warden of the prison calls Ajahn John personally and says, I want you to come back and teach the men. And he said, I'm retiring next year, and it would mean a great deal to me if you'd come and teach again. And Ajahn Brahm says, what a lovely sentiment, and I so appreciate it. I'm more than happy to send my senior monks to teach. It's just a delight for us. We're very happy to serve. And the warden says, nope, I want you. And Ajahn Brahm says, well, it's very kind, but unfortunately I have a very demanding teaching schedule. I'm not sure I can do it. And the warden said, please, I'm retiring. This is a request to you. It would mean the world to me. I want you specifically because every man you have taught, once they've been released from prison, none of them have ever returned to prison. Now, I don't know how much you know about recidivism in a prison population, but it's extremely high. 60, 70, 80% of persons are likely to commit another crime, at least of a minor kind, and end up in the system again. This is an extraordinary finding. Well, Ajahn said I sort of couldn't say no at that point, could I? And he and his monks, of course, taught again with great joy. He also tells about speaking with prisoners, and he speaks beautifully, and I think we all need to learn from this. Ajahn Brahm says, I've never met a murderer. I've met people who've murdered. I've never met a rapist. I've met people who've raped. I've never met a thief. I've met people who've stolen. if all of us, this is a bit of Cheryl, not him, so I don't want to attribute it to him in case it's not skillful. If all of us are judged by our worst acts in our life so far, how would we look? How would we look if we boiled down who we are to the worst 5 minutes, the worst hour taken of our life so far? So I love the beautiful Dharma in the person who, through their greed, hatred, and delusion, all of us included, commit unwholesome acts, even profoundly unwholesome acts. And in the Dharma, this is still seen as a pure being with tremendous unwholesome poisons that they're working to liberate. So he tells the stories about being with these men and teaching them. And he tells a story about one of his monks who was over teaching and had taught 6 weeks in a row. And the men were really enjoying this monk and very curious about, what was it like to be a monk? What happens next door? What do you guys get up to over there? And so they'd invited this monk to stay for the afternoon when the Dharma class was over and to sort of socialize with them. And he, with great pleasure, accepted that. He was kind of hanging out in the activities room and had a meal with the men that were incarcerated. And they were really, really curious, as all of us would be. So what do you do over there? And this monk said, well, let's see. He said, well, when do you get up? What do you do? What do you do? And he said, okay. Well, we get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. And he said, but don't worry, it's optional. You're allowed to get up earlier. And the men all went, oh my goodness. And he said, and then we practice and meditate for a couple of hours. And then we have our breakfast. I said, oh, what do you have for breakfast? They said, well, we have a bowl of sort of thin porridge is what we have in Theravadan tradition. And the men looked scandalized, the incarcerated persons. And they said, gosh, we can have, whatever we want. And the monk said, well, what? They said, well, we can have bacon and eggs. We have waffles some days. We have sausage. We have potatoes, we have it's grand breakfast, fruit, we eat really well here. And the monk said, oh, that's wonderful. And they said, and then what do you do? And he said, well, we usually will do some more practice and study, and then we've got about a 3-4 hour work period. Well, what do you do for work? Oh, we'll, dig in the garden, we'll, build walls, we'll, do construction. So right now we're moving rocks, making a big rock garden. And they're like, wow, manual labor, wow, we don't even have to do that. And I said, yeah, that's what we do. And then what do you have for lunch? He said, well, for lunch, we have our meal. But they do it in the Theravadan bowl manner, which means the food is all laid out, and each monk has 2 robes and a bowl and a spoon. And this is very traditional in full ordination in that tradition. And you eat all of your food out of one bowl. So as they tell it, if it's, say, I don't know, shepherd's pie and peas and strawberry shortcake, you put it all in one bowl at once. And that's how you eat your food. Which didn't go over very well with the prisoners. I thought that was pretty awful. We've got lovely lunches and we have our dessert separate and whatnot. Okay, well then what do you do? Well, in the afternoon we might meditate some more and practice more and then do studies and do service. Well, what do you do after that? Do you have any fun? Do you have any leisure time? So, well, we meditate. Well, but, do you watch movies? No, we don't. We're not allowed any TV. What? We've got a whole movie system over here. Oh my goodness. Well, what about play cards? Do you play cards? No, we meditate or we be with our thoughts. And the guys are getting sorrier and sorrier and sorrier for the monk. What a dreadful, dreadful time if he's got it over there. Okay, well, what about dinner? Oh, we don't have dinner. We have our main meal at noon and then that's it. We only get tea. Oh, goodness, we get steak and hamburgers and this and that. And in the evening, we meditate and we do prayers and we do chanting and then we go to bed about 11 or 12. And they said, man, you should come live with us. We've got it way better than you do. And it's a beautiful story because it begs this question, what makes us a prisoner? We're in prison anytime we do not want to be where we are. It's that simple. The monks want to be in the monastery. They want to be studying the mind. They want to be having strawberry shortcake on their hamburger and tea for supper. They want to work and want to serve. I'm not naive. We've all studied our mind even for 20 minutes just now. That doesn't mean we always like being where we want to be. I've been on long retreats where I very much didn't like being here and here and here. But overall I was there because I wanted to be, so I wasn't a prisoner. We're a prisoner when we don't want to be where we want to be. So right now, if you have some anxiety in your mind, you probably don't want to be there. That means you're in prison. I'll repeat that. Right now, if you have some anxiety or any other unpleasantness in your mind, you probably don't want to be there. That means you're in prison. Prison is the opposite of free. In Buddha Dharma, we talk about freedom. It's one of the translations of awakening or enlightenment. Freedom from suffering. Freedom from not wanting where we are. That's when you're free. So if you take that, it means if there's anxiety or grief or anger in the mind, if there's pain or exhaustion or illness in the body, and we don't want to be here with it, we're in prison. And therefore, if we simply accept it and want to be with it, we're free. As Ajahn Brahm says in one of his talks, he says, if you are sad, love the sadness and you're free. If you're anxious, love the anxiety and you're free. Free from wanting something other than what is. You just rehearsed that. We just rehearsed that together. We rehearsed just being with one breath and not wanting to be anywhere else. And if we caught ourselves wanting to be anywhere else, which we probably did a lot, can we love being with the discomfort of trying to focus on the breath? If we can fall in love with whatever's happening, whether it's pleasant or unpleasant, easy or horrible, we're free. We're free from suffering. We might have tremendous physical pain, tremendous emotional consternation, but we're ultimately free. We're only in prison when we don't want to be there. 2 buildings side by side off a road in Australia, both with walls, one with way better food, way better entertainment, way more to do. Which one feels like a prison? The one we don't have a choice to escape. We always have a choice to escape. Always have a choice to escape. He tells a story. This took place in Thailand in our lifetime, 20, 30, 40 years ago. My apologies, I don't have that accurate right now off the top of my head. That the in-line person in Thailand to be the abbot or leader of the entire Buddhist sort of community in Thailand was ailing and was about to die. And his successor, the successor by kind of lineage and experience, and I believe maybe the chosen successor of the one who was about to pass out of the body, was there ready to take on the job when asked. And there was a second in command. The second in command had a lot of jealousy and envy towards the first in command. So they created apparently some false accusations of impropriety of the first in command. And the first in command was found guilty and was imprisoned for, I think, about 2 years. And then the person who, then the second in command, who'd manufactured false charges against the first in command, became the head of the Buddhist lineage there in Thailand. And then apparently during this person's tenure, they were traveling somewhere as an entourage for teaching or for meetings. And there was the car carrying the person who was now in command, who did, falsely accused the person that they replaced, and their car, and sort of an entourage of cars, as there tends to be around an important person. And a car coming in the other direction lost control, crossed the line, smashed into the car that this person and a few others were in, with all these cars around it, only hit that car, and the only person that was hurt was the person, and he was killed. Everybody else was untouched. Whatever one makes of that. And then some investigations went on, and some things were looked at, and it was uncovered that the accusations against the number one, who is now in prison, were false, and he was released, and he was, given great mea culpas. We're very sorry that these accusations came against you. They said, and how are you? How are you? He says, I'm wonderful. It was fantastic. For 2 years, I got to do nothing but meditate. I didn't have to talk to students about their marriage problems. I didn't have to do service. I wasn't busy. I could just train in the mind. It was marvelous. So he was in prison, but he wasn't in prison. He was in prison, but he was free. Free because he wanted to be there. It was fine to be there. Wherever he was would be fine. Wherever he was would be fine. You can imprison my body. You cannot trap my mind. Where are you imprisoned in your life these days? Is it the prison of financial uncertainty? That's a huge one for so many of us. Is it the prison of an aging or an ailing body? Huge one for all of us at some point. Is it the prison of a difficult relationship with a child, a partner, a parent, a friend, a workmate? Is it the prison of just a general unease in the mind that visits too often, anxiety or sadness, self-doubt? Is it the prison of believing we need to be something else other than right here, right now in order to be happy? The prison that we need to be somewhere else instead of the right here, right now in order to be happy? Is it the prison of wishing you could gain more weight or lose weight? Is it the prison of wishing your food tasted better? Is it the prison of wishing your pet wasn't getting old? What prisons are we creating by our mind's reaction to the present moment? Where are we feeling in prison when we can be free? The poisons, the 3 poisons, are the way the Buddha teaches the 3 root causes of our suffering. And the root hetu, H-E-T-U, is the Pali word that translates in English to the roots. And I want you to think about the root of a plant or a tree, the root of anything growing. Without the root, the plant or tree dies, correct? If you want to remove a plant or a weed, that's simply a differentiation by the way that we make something's a weed versus something desired. That's all in the mind. And we want to remove it, we know we've got to dig out the roots or it can restart, right? Same with our poisons, our mental, emotional poisons. I'll name them in a moment, of course. That we want to look at eventually eradicating them at the root. But let's be real. Most of us have some sort of plant around us on our land or our apartment building or places where we walk. We can't always get it out by the root. We don't have the right tools. We don't have the right muscle power. So we might just chop off a limb for a bit. We might do some pruning, right? Make the plant smaller. That's what we tend to do with our 3 poisons. That's a great start. Sometimes we might think we've cut it off at the root, right at the ground, but we've forgotten there's all these tendrils underneath. That's a great experience, a great way to describe the experience we have when we try to work with our mental, emotional poisons, the big 3. Greed, hatred, and delusion. Greed, lobha. Hatred, dosa. Delusion, moha. Those are the Pali words for those of you that like to study these things. So these, according to the Buddha, are the roots of all of our mental, emotional suffering. It'd be important to know them then, isn't it? And important to spot them and try to trim them back, trim them back, trim them back, at least pluck some leaves off them, do as much as we can until such time as we might uproot them entirely and they never grow back. That's called awakening or enlightenment. We can aspire to that. But even if we're not there yet, we can certainly trim our garden, our mental, emotional garden, so we're not imprisoned by the vines. I've got these vines down the stairs at my home. Many of you have been to my home, and they're just going mental right now and growing everywhere. So we're going to trim them back. We're going to trim them back so the stairs are a little more aesthetically pleasing, but more importantly that they're safe. We don't want tendrils of those roots starting to creep onto the staircase. Could, snag a foot. That wouldn't be good, given that it's a fairly steep cement staircase. Same as your mind. Can we at least trim back the bits that are going to do harm? Let's start there with the roots of greed, the roots of wanting or clinging or needing. We all have this. Please, this is not a self-recrimination class. I don't want you to hear this and go, oh my goodness, I have greed. Of course you do. I have it too. I'm not a full awake Buddha yet. I hope to become that in one incarnation one day. Greed is where we want. We seek shiny objects. We seek things to help us feel safer, happier, temporarily and relatively only, and to in the false belief that this is going to be the answer, right? So the car you're driving, if it has 4 safe wheels and an engine that works and a steering wheel that works, is probably fine. But we decide we need a different color, a better car, a new model, an upgrade. And it's very tempting. Don't feel bad. We're inundated with something like 40,000 inputs a day of sales messaging. just by being in the world, including all our own sales messaging. We look at our mug and think, oh, it's getting a bit old. Maybe I'd like a new one. Over and over and over and over and over and over and over. Get stuff, get stuff, get stuff. I ring my bell. You think, oh, I want a bell. I'm going to go bell shopping. You know, I have a sip from this water bottle that the lovely folks here provide me. You think, oh, yeah, I should probably get a metal water bottle. They say plastic's bad for me. I want that. Oh, that's a nice Buddha. I want that. Oh, I like her shirt. I want that. It's like everywhere. It's not your fault. It's the mind. It's the greed of the mind. It's the poison in the mind of wanting. Of wanting. Maybe that's a better translation for now than greed. Just the simple wanting. Wanting what? To be happy. That's not a bad thing to want, but we're deluded, that's the third one, when we think reaching for a bell or a top or nice socks or a watch or something's going to do the trick. So we want to keep repeating that almost like a mantra, that when I want, I suffer. Now, if you can be a courteous audience in a state of grace and think, you know, it would be really lovely for this room to have some beautiful plants. I think I'll go shopping for some plants. That's not necessarily greed. It can just be choosing to buy plants. The greed part is hanging on and thinking it'll make us happy. It's fine to acquire things. I will put forward, though, as Dharma people, if we acquire things and go into a bunch of debt or buy expensive cars when we had an okay car that would have kept going and was safe, we may end up shooting ourselves in the foot because we end up with all these financial obligations that make it harder to study Dharma. A lot of you are making changes in your lives, as I've done, to, you know, maybe do less or have less to study more Dharma. This makes me very happy. This is very good. So let me just differentiate. The Buddha's teaching, the teaching I'm offering today, do not say, don't go buy things. Don't be a consumer. What they say is be wise and skillful and compassionate in your consumption. Compassionate to self, compassionate to other. So certainly buy some treats or some lovely things if you like, if it's more or less in your budget and doesn't create strain and drain, and it leaves you free to do wholesome things for your body and mind, great. Great. Nothing wrong with buying a bauble you don't need. The only place it becomes problematic is when we get deluded, poison number 3, and we go into a ton of debt, and then, like, I can't, you know, go to yoga class, and I can't, you know, go to the chiropractor, and I can't go to Dharma class because I've gone into huge amounts of debt. We've done it. We'll do it. Don't worry. It's just beautiful to see, oh, freedom lies in, not about the money, whether you have heaps or very little. It's about living in a way that creates freedom for you, to study the things that matter to you, to train in the things that matter to you, to access Dharma, meditation, the things that will deliver you more than a bauble will. What I hope is for abundance. What I hope is for wholesome livelihood, one of the 8 steps of the Eightfold Path, that you're making your income in a way that's wholesome, and that can be anything almost that you bring a wholesome attitude to, and that income supports you to do the work of unfolding. That is beautiful. That is beautiful. But the poison of greed is when we're chasing after acquiring, not necessarily just physical things that cost money. It might be acquiring, you know, a perfect body or something, or you know, the perfect partner. When we're chasing after acquiring in the belief it will deliver us forever, that's where we're in the poison of greed. So it's beautiful to work with this on small levels, really small levels. Like when you kind of want a cup of tea, sometimes just don't have it. Oh, there's craving. Perfectly fine to have a cup of tea. I have lots of them. But just play with, what is it to want something that I choose then to let go? What is it to desire something I choose to then let go? Play with it on small things so you maybe become better at letting go of big things, and that frees us up to have more choice. What I want for each and every one of you is abundance of spirit, mind, and happiness. I want you to have comfortable homes, safe vehicles, and the time and the willingness and ability to study Dharma. And that's what almost all of you are doing. You know, you were at a 10-day retreat in August. Yahoo! It's happening. It's beautiful. Let's keep it up. So the poison of greed, when we're in it, we're in prison. When we're in it and we forget the bigger picture, we're in prison. When we remember the bigger picture, which in a Dharma view is freedom from suffering for self and others, we may make different choices. That's what we're all in the process of doing. Dharma people are generally not very wealthy. They're profoundly wealthy, I would say, in what matters. But my friend Trudy Goodman, Jack Cornfield's wife, she's been teaching Dharma basically full-time for decades. She doesn't have much money. Yeah, she rents a place. She can't afford to buy something in LA, right? She wouldn't mind me sharing this. That's why I'm sharing it. I was down with her in June, and we were talking about, our choices around, she left her psychotherapy practice decades ago to teach Dharma full-time. You don't get rich teaching Dharma. Isn't that beautiful, though? Beautiful. Just that dedication to teach and help and serve and to trust that having enough is enough. It's wonderful. So that's a little bit on the poison of greed, that when we're trapped in it, we're in a prison of our making. I'm not being silly here. Debts are real. Financial obligations are real. It's tough, hey? It's really tough. So it's just that, wisdom, bringing more and more wisdom to supporting our life in that way. The second one is anger, sometimes called hatred, dosa, sometimes called aversion. I do this because it's about pushing away. Greed's about and dosa is about pushing away. I don't want it. I don't want this illness. I don't want this headache. I don't want this financial burden. I don't want this worry. I don't want this person sitting next to me that breathes noisily when I'm trying to meditate. I don't want the fan making noise. I don't want whatever was going on over there with some construction. I don't want. We're in suffering. When we don't want, we build a prison. We build a prison of aversion. We build a prison of, stop. Go away. Go away so I can be comfortable. Right? It's painful. My Lord, isn't it painful? Isn't it painful? You live with noisy neighbors or on a noisy street or someone really unpleasant who is suffering, who makes a lot of noise in the place next to you, and it's really distressing. How's your mind when we're in aversion? Well, you're suffering. I am too. Happens to me all the time, of course. But what when we can catch it, we can go, I'm going to pull a few leaves off that. I'm going to trim one stem off that plant, that root, that hetu of dosa, aversion, hating. I'm going to trim that back. When you're in a really strong mood, you might get a machete and hack a bunch of it off. Yahoo! It might start to grow back, especially under the perfect circumstances. What are your perfect circumstances for hate, anger, and aggression to grow? You know. If you don't know, study your mind. You probably know. When you're super tired, when certain people trigger your buttons, often people from your past. When there's injustice, people hurting innocent people. Like, what are your dosa fertilizers, people? Reading the news? Listening to anything Donald Trump says? What is it for you? What feeds your dosa? Stop feeding it! Come on, you're very clever. Don't water it and put fertilizer on it. I'm going to go on, I don't know, right-wing radio feeds just to see how crazy they are today. Why? Don't do it. Don't do it. Listen to a Dharma talk. Listen to a piece of classical violin music. Feed the positive, not the negative. Yes, Barbara?
Is it as simple as just recognizing that anger or whatever is starting to build up inside? Is that it?
It's a heck of a good first start at it. Because when we don't recognize it, we're usually in it. We're in the ocean drowning and going, in the anger. Often with reactivity. Often happens in a lightning bolt. Few milliseconds in the body. Yep. Cortisol, adrenaline, the biochemistry of anger, fight or flight is there. So recognizing it before it's there or when it's there is brilliant, because then you can see that the prison has a door and it's not locked. I'm in an anger state. Better yet, don't use the word I. Anger is present. Good. What am I going to do about it? First of all, hopefully shut up. Because if anger is present, I probably won't speak skillfully. Secondly, don't take action, because if anger is present, I probably won't act wisely. And then what? Maybe go for a walk, maybe go pet a kitty cat, maybe jump up and down and do some jumping jacks to get rid of the cortisol. But not taking action is profoundly wholesome, because the state might be present. It is present for a lot of us, often, as you're pointing out, in an ambush. What we then do next is where we can practice Dharma, right? Poison is present. Should I share it with you? Right? Literally, if I was, filled with literal like snake poison, like, oh, here, have some, Barbara. Swallow this. That's what we do when we're in a poisonous state. And then often we feel badly pretty quickly thereafter because we're good beings. We're good beings. Good beings with some poisonous overtones, just like all the incarcerated persons.
And then we feel guilty.
I don't, but people do. Yeah. What I feel is remorse, which is different. Guilt is, I'm a lousy person. Blah. Remorse is, that wasn't skillful, Cheryl. I regret that. I can fix that or try to fix it, and I can vow to do better. So shift it a tad. That's a wholesome approach. Is in the Abhidhamma, it's called Hiri and Otopa, are these two mini mind states of feeling regret for our unskillful actions and moral shame. It's a poor translation. I don't like the word shame there, but sort of moral reckoning. That wasn't very good, Cheryl. You can do better. That's great. Guilt tends to be, I'm a bad person, I suck, I shouldn't have. It's got layers of self-aversion on it, which isn't helpful from a Dharma point of view, right? So yeah, you're right on track. I'm just tweaking that a little to say, I regret that. That wasn't wholesome. See, there's power in that, right? There's compassion in that for self and other when I err. Like, that wasn't good. I vow to do better. And it's Vajrasattva practice for some of you that are working with some Vajrayana. So yes, it's almost as simple as trying to notice it. Spot the poison. If you don't know your poison, you can't apply the antidote. Right? You just go around blah, 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 not knowing you're filled with poison. So I'll come to the antidotes in a moment, but great question. So the third poison plant that you want to trim back, weed, and eventually, I hope for all of us and for all beings, eradicate, is the poison of ignorance, delusion, bewilderment is a phrase, a word Lama Mark's been offering, which is a beautiful one, I think. What are we confused, deluded, or bewildered about? The nature of reality, the nature of what will bring true cessation of suffering, the nature of the difference between the story in our mind and the direct experience of what's actually happening. We're bewildered about impermanence. We're upset when our pet dies at 15 instead of going, well, yeah, I love my pet and may she pass with grace. And of course they died when they were, give or take, 15 plus or minus 5 years probably. It's just the nature of reality. I have a personal axe to grind. I'm really, really tired about hearing the language in the media when someone dies who's, over the age of 60 or 70, and they say, the tragic death of. And they died of cancer or nothing tragic about it. It's sad. What's tragic about dying when you're old? It's the natural progression of reality. Delusion labels it as tragic. Oh, it's tragic. No, you twit. It's the nature of being in a mortal body. Sorry, but don't kill the messenger. So it's just a way we cling to this idea that shouldn't happen, which is completely deluded. And I hope I'm not shocking anybody here. You're going to die. 100 years, give or take. So far is what we got. It's not tragic. It's reality. But we're deluded. At times, not always. And so we often act as though we're invincible. We've got forever. We've got time later to do the important stuff. I hope so. I dearly, deeply, profoundly hope so. But I don't know. So how about, as many of you are doing, do it now. Do it now. Get a chance to do a month retreat. You don't know how you're going to do it. You're doing it. This is very good. Because you have now. Well, we've got now. We could get hit by a meteor and that's that. So we literally have now, this moment, this sentence I'm saying. I should probably make it more worthwhile, shouldn't I? The third poison is moha, or delusion, or bewilderment. Bewilderment about the Four Noble Truths, the cause of suffering, which is impermanence. Impermanence doesn't cause any suffering, but not accepting the reality of impermanence and therefore clinging and trying to control reality in a way to make things perfect all the time. Doesn't work. As the Four Noble Truths say, and the Fourth Noble Truth says, here's 8 trainings you can take to help you. Let go of your clinging, let go of your aversion, and start to antidote your delusion. So the antidote to greed is pretty obvious, I think. Generosity. Generosity of spirit to yourself and others. Generosity of your resources to self and others. Generosity of funds, or the apples in your backyard, or anything you can do, as so many of you do, just to support others, whether you volunteer a day a week somewhere, whether you drop off food at the food bank, whether you show up to help a friend who needs pet care, all these generous things. It's the antidote to our own greed, our own mind's greed. Give stuff away. Acquire something you enjoy, great. Give something else away so someone else can enjoy it. Just practice generosity to self too. Do not forget yourself. We're on about awakening for all beings. All beings. That includes you. It doesn't mean I'll be generous to everybody else, but I'll treat myself badly. Of course it doesn't. Generosity to self and others is the antidote to selfishness. What do you think the antidote to hate is? Love. Loving kindness, metta. Practice more compassion and kindness to yourself and others. When anger is present, can we bring love to the being that is angry, right? The suffering me or you that is feeling the poison of anger. It's an awful way to feel. It's kind of fun for a few minutes, and then it's awful. Like when you're self-righteous, it feels good for maybe a few minutes, and then you're in, because you're good beings. You don't like to harm with your words. You don't like to harm with your actions, nor do I. I do it too often because I'm not yet a Buddha. But we don't like to. So can we bring love to the state? Anger is present. This body is struggling. This mind is struggling. Can I be kind? Can I be kind? Can I take this being for a walk? Can I walk it off? Right? Practice more loving kindness, both as a meditation technique and in your actions. The antidote to delusion is wisdom. That's why you're here. And I hope in an imperfect way I'm helping a tiny bit. The wisdom of sharing together these teachings and being reminded, oh, right, there is a way to be in the world where I can reduce suffering, even a little bit for myself today. If I cling a little less today, if I catch my annoyance or worse more quickly today and try not to act on it. If I act on it unskillfully, if I have some regret, I apologize. I'm really sorry. That was really snappy of me, and I'm sorry I spoke that way. That wasn't cool. I'm going to try to do better. Great. And when we get deluded, all of us today, many times, about what really matters, let's build a deck on the house. That'll make us happy. Right? Let's this, let's that. Just say, maybe a deck is a skillful choice. Sometimes it is. But just look at it. It's not going to make you happy forever. So the antidote to delusion is wisdom. The wisdom of studying the mind, studying the heart, studying the teachings. What happens when we're in the world with a little more kindness and love, a little more generosity, and a little more clarity? We suffer less. The persons we come into contact will probably suffer less, even if it's just a contact high. We're only in prison when we don't want to be there. And when we don't want to be there, we're in aversion. I don't want this state, feeling, relationship, problem, financial issue. I don't want it. And we're probably at the same time in clinging. I want to be free of this pain, I'd like to have money. I'd like to have a better friend who doesn't cause me pain. That's foolish, but that's what we might think we want. I'd like to have a car that's working better. I'd like to have a body that doesn't hurt. So we're both in aversion and clinging often at the same time. And the mother of them all, the big root, the big poison that trumps everything else is ignorance. If we can eradicate ignorance, if we can see the true nature of things, the greed and the aversion will melt away. You need to prune your gardens. This one. Oh, the beautiful little flowers in there, water them. Those are the good states. Enjoy them. But what happens when you pick flowers? Well, they last a while, they fade away. Beautiful teaching of impermanence. Cultivate the positive mind states. Cultivate wisdom. And what do you do with nasty poisonous plants in your head? Trim them, cut them down. They'll grow back for a while. Maybe for this whole lifetime, maybe the next lifetime, I don't know. But keep at it. Be great gardeners of the mind.
Can't you take a bigger weeder, like you do for dandelions, and pull them right up?
You absolutely can. And see what happens. Can you take a bigger thing and pull it right out, she says. Yes! Probably for most of us, there'll be a little bit of a root left. And it might take a while for it to sprout and then grow. And if it doesn't, then that's one of the first levels of becoming an arahat or a fully awake person, is the eradication of anger. It's gone, never to appear again. The eradication of greed. Gone, never to appear again. Absolutely, we can be compassionately ruthless at pulling them out. Because if it's done with anger, you're missing the point. I hate this mind state of hate. Hang on a minute, can you hear the problem in that? Right, and that's often how we approach it, right? I hate my depression state. I hate this anxiety. I want peace. Then we're in trouble. It's a good start. It's better than nothing because we're at least seeing what's in the mind and wanting to do something about it. But it's, as you get more and more skillful, we need our action to come from compassion and wisdom, or we're just simply having aversion to the aversion or aversion to the greed or greed for peace. And then we're just kind of swapping poison for poison like a shell game or something. But all of these are good because they show you're thinking about, I am not a victim of the mind state, which is the way we mostly experience our life, till we start to realize we actually can work with our mind state. So we're no longer a victim. Well, I'm in a bad mood, right? How many of us have said and felt that? I certainly use it. I'm just in a bad mood. I'm just in a bad mood. Negative mind state present. What do I want to do about it? Water it? Fertilize it? Invite it home for dinner? How about I attempt to trim it or pluck it out with compassion for self and others? You had another question?
Is part of the reason that we suffer is because we don't understand that who we think we are is not who we really are. Mm-hmm. We don't understand our true nature.
Yes.
And through meditation and, I guess, teachings, hopefully at some point that we'll understand or at least experience who we really are.
Yes.
But most of the time, that's the
we get caught in the illusion of self, and who we really are isn't really a who. Ultimately, in the Mahayana Vajrayana view, it's Buddha nature. It's compassionate, loving, limitless, boundless mind. And yes, through meditation and teachings and long retreats and long retreats and long retreats, that can be experienced. A few very blessed people will experience it without long retreats, often by a fairly diligent daily practice, where they're practicing an hour or two a day in daily life because they're not in a position to do long retreats. But long retreats really help because it helps move from the intellectual, conceptual understanding or approach that, the Cheryl I think I am that I'm running around trying to make happy all the time is an illusory idea. And ultimately there's a graceful, boundless, which you all taste you've all tasted this, just where everything's easy and open and non-judgmental and you feel like $1,000,000. It's great to approach that intellectually and it helps, but for the majority of us, it's doing a fair chunk of work that we start to actually experientially, there's just peaceful and calmness present for a whole sit or half a day or longer to help solidify that this is really possible. It's really possible for the poisons to melt away and to just feel the base ground of being. So yeah, we study, we learn, we fall off the wagon, we don't come for ages, we don't meditate for ages, no problem, it's life. And then we come back and we go, yay, that work I did before is still there. It waits. It waits. So, prison. This is the only prison. If Canada was taken over by a hostile coup in the last hour, and we all walk out of here and we're seen as, radical liberal somethings, and we're all thrown in prison, awesome, Dharma class. man, we could get a lot of meditation done. Just think what we could all do together. And eventually, when the artificial prison imposed by others was opened up, we'd come out far more awake than now. The beautiful thing is we can do that at home, in between kids and jobs and RSP saving and all that stuff, bit by bit. But yeah, I'm not going to hold the cards close to my chest. Retreat helps. For the majority of us, retreat helps, and more retreat helps more. So this is a beautiful way to support your practice, but I hope many of you will join me and others on shorter and longer retreats as well to help support this profound, beautiful work that you're doing. So, back to Ajahn Brahm and the prisoners next door. He talks about when he himself was teaching there, he was working with a person who had committed a very difficult crime, and where another person lost their life. And that person was talking to Ajahn Brahm. Ajahn Brahm told the brick story, right? And this fellow came up to me and he said, I get it. I'm 998 good bricks. The crime was just 2 bad bricks. That's not all I am. Wow. How beautiful. How true in my view. In the view of Dharma. That however hijacked we are by our poisons, whatever acts we commit in the hijacking of our poisons, where we're completely deluded, we're filled with aversion and greed, completely confused. It's 2 bad bricks. The totality of us is Buddha nature. Anything can be redeemed. Any one of us can work to reduce and even eradicate our poisons. And that to me is the most beautiful, hopeful, profound thing in the world. So when our judgment comes up about the acts of ourselves or others, can we remember it's the poisons? That doesn't mean we let people harm us or we harm them. If poisons are rampant, if someone came into my house with a knife trying to slit my throat, and I wouldn't go, oh, you're in a state of poison, here you go. Because that might not be skillful for them or me. Might be better to run away, well, knowing in compassionate that they were in a state of suffering and the poisons, and hopefully they could be stopped and be helped and have their poisons lessened and find their own good heart. Same with yourself. When you're feeling aversion, greed, delusion about yourself, when you're feeling mean to yourself, which most of you do way too often, can you bring compassion? These are poisons. I am not awake yet. I am not perfect. Can I love this imperfect being? There's a quote, I think it's from W.H. Auden, but I'm pulling that out of memory, so I'm not entirely sure. Love your crooked neighbor with all your crooked heart. Beautiful, right? Love your crooked neighbor with all your crooked heart. Love this crooked neighbor with all your crooked heart, too. You, the neighbor of you. Oh, hello, you live close to me, don't you? Gosh, imperfect, beautiful being. Couple bad bricks in here. A lot of good ones, though. A lot of good ones, though. That's each and every being, each and every one of you. So, does it matter which driveway you take, to the monastery or the prison? No. It's in here. What we do with this, and how we move towards hopefully being more and more wholesome in our internal and external behaviors. Body, speech, and mind. That's where freedom is. If you can love whatever's happening, no matter how difficult it is, you're free. So on that note, we'll sit together for about 5 minutes and then close. We close with a dedication of merit, essentially gathering the positive intentions and wisdoms of all your minds and your good intentions and us sharing the Dharma today. And we offer those blessings to ourselves and to all beings. May all beings be well. May all beings be happy. May all beings be free from suffering in body and mind. May all beings dwell in perfect equanimity. May all beings awaken swiftly for the benefit of self and others. May it be so.